So you are a researcher or academic with multiple projects on the go, and you're struggling to juggle multiple projects and try to figure out which one to prioritize. This is a common problem and one that I'm sure many of you can relate to. But don't worry, I've got some tips and tricks to help you out. First, I will talk about general strategies when it comes to juggling multiple projects. Number one, prioritization. Prioritize your research projects based on urgency, importance, and potential impact of each project. Because the topic of prioritization requires a much longer explanation, stick around to the end of the video. I will give you more details how to prioritize different projects and different manuscripts. Tip number two, project management. I talk about project management all the time, but what do you actually need to do? So you need to develop a project timeline, and that includes creating a detailed schedule that outlines all the tasks that need to be completed, the order in which they will need to be completed, and the estimated completed time for each task. You will also need to assign tasks and responsibility. This means identifying the team members who will be responsible for each task, as well as their roles and responsibility within each project. This will free up your time and allow you to focus more critical aspects of the research. Then when you delegate these tasks, try to leverage their existing skills. If you are to assign tasks to members who are not skilled in a certain area, be sure to train them or audit their work. If not, you're not delegating, you're merely abdicating your responsibilities. Point number three, time management and focus. So I love something called time blocking. That means you allocate specific blocks of time for each research task and make sure you stick to the schedule as much as possible. And importantly, when you get to that block, focus only on that task. Don't jump between projects, don't jump between tasks. For example, if you're doing data analysis during that block, don't start checking emails or checking your phone. Jumping between tasks is called context switching, and that's really destructive and decrease your productivity. Every time you switch, you lose time. It takes time to get back to the flow. Tip number four, develop a communication plan. So this involves identifying and establishing a plan for regular and effective communication with key stakeholders in the project. For example, team members, the funders, collaborators, and advisors. This is really important to ensure that everyone is on the same page. This can help you avoid duplicated efforts and ensure that everyone is aware of any changes or updates. Tip number five, be flexible and adapt. When you're doing something for the first time, it usually takes a lot more time than expected. So instead of getting angry or frustrated, be flexible and be open to adjusting your strategies as needed. And importantly, keep track of how much time that task took. That way, in the future, you can adjust your schedule. For example, you may have allocated 1 hour to write the whole research protocol. And then after 1 hour, you have only managed to gather the correct documents and completed 2 sections. And now you realize there are 15 more sections to go. Now you have learned that you probably need to allocate 4 more hours to do that task. The bottom line is, if a project is taking longer than expected, or if your priorities change, be willing to adjust your schedule and allocate more time to the project that needed the most. I know conducting a research project is an overwhelming process, so I made the idea to paper blueprint for you. This blueprint takes you through a 7-step process from idea generation to paper submission. So be sure to get a copy by clicking the link at the description below. Now, let us get deeper into prioritization. This can be a challenging task, especially when there are multiple projects at different phases. And this is the most common problem I see. Academics not knowing which one to do first and end up feeling overwhelmed. Then whenever they work on something, their mind is worried about not doing the other project. And so let me share my personal method of prioritization. Every week, I will have 3 projects I work on. 1 project that is urgent and has a critical step that relies on me. 1 project that will produce a quick win, and then 1 project that is important but not urgent. So let's break it down. Projects that are urgent and has a critical step. Think about upcoming deadlines. Focus on projects that have upcoming deadlines such as grant renewals or revise and resubmissions. These projects should take priority because missing a deadline can have serious consequences. Losing funding or missing an opportunity to publish. One example, if your research paper has gone through many rounds of review and editors and reviewers are asking for additional revisions, prioritize this project. Make sure you get it in before the deadline. You're already so close to the finish line, just get it in. Another type, those at a critical stage. And this comes down to the stage of the project. A different type of project, those at critical stage. Projects that are at critical stage or end stage should take priority over projects that are at an earlier stage. For example, data collection or analysis should take priority over projects that are earlier in stages. That is because the outcomes of these projects are more uncertain and a delay could potentially impact the results. The next category, projects that produce quick wins. These types of projects are so important for our psyche and for our motivation. Humans need wins and successes to get energy to continue moving. So don't ignore these type of projects. My favorite type, collaboration projects. Each week, I will dedicate 1 to 2 hours on a collaboration project. Why? Because it's a quick win. Since I'm not the principal investigator, I only need to contribute a particular part. I don't have to worry about leading the team, gathering all the different parts, making sure it's moving forward. Also, collaboration projects often have a greater impact and are more likely to be successful when multiple researchers are involved. One quick tip, be a good collaborator. Always get your part in a timely manner. That will help you build your professional network, and people will invite you to collaborate with them again in the future. That will increase your visibility within the research community. Next type, simple or easy projects. If you have 2 manuscripts that require revisions, they both have similar deadlines. I will always do the easier one first. Close the cycle and get the quick win. Now, the final type, projects that are important but not urgent. So these are things that are stable and are always there on my calendar. What really changes every week is the milestone. So the first type, funded projects. My funded 5-year project is always there on my calendar. It's a stable thing that's always there, and what really changes every week is the stage where I'm at. And that brings me back to project management. If you have a good plan at the start, you know that by this month, you need to meet a certain milestone before you can move on to the next stage. And ensuring that the project moves to the next stage is really important to ensure that your project will be completed all the way, and then the findings will be disseminated. One more thing is funded projects are typically avenues to generating results to prepare for the next cycle of grant submission. It is important to continue to get funding so that the next project gets resources necessary to conduct your research. For example, equipment, staff, and supplies. Final category, projects that have a potential large impact. This is what I call building the well. And these are the projects that have potential to make a significant contribution to the field and secure funding. In these type of projects, you're not going to see any results now. But if you start building the foundation, in 3 to 4 years, you would have sufficient preliminary data or necessary connection to do a bigger study that's more likely to secure funding and attract collaborators. To give you an idea on how I split my research time, 40% projects that I lead, typically more funded projects than unfunded projects. 10% build the well projects, 10% collaboration projects, 20% administrative and strategic thinking, and 20% skills building. Bear in mind, I have 75% research time, so I am handling around 10 projects at a time, some small, some medium, some big. So for those who are more heavy with clinical duties, you may have to adjust your schedule. You don't have to follow mine exactly, or you may have to operate at a longer timeline, not weekly, but operate in a monthly timeline. Now, before I got my grant, I had to work a lot more on clinical work. So how do we carve out time if we have heavy clinical duties? Watch this video next where I show you how I streamline my clinic to save extra 6 hours per week.